Is that one going as well? So that one's going. Both are going. Everything looks good. Okay. So now everything's recording. Now we can chat.
Let's chat.
And it's legit. So welcome, everyone. This is my very, very good friend, Pastor Walt Tompkins, also known as Duder to me and my house. This boy's been Duder since we were little kids together growing up. A lot of years, man, we've known each other since we were little tykes.
Our whole lives.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we're going to talk about our whole lives here coming up. Right here on the Southern Drawl Podcast with Southern Traditions. Let's get it. So I'm so glad that we're finally able to do this. We've been wanting to do this for a long time. And of course, you live way up here in Georgia, and I live way down there in Florida, so we don't get to get together a lot.
Yeah, I wish it could be more.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I had the pleasure of sitting in on your sermon this past Sunday at church. Very good. Very well done. It was funny because after we left, Victoria said, she said, well, I've pretty much heard all those same words come out of your mouth. So y'all obviously think the same way.
It's funny how that happened, right?
You do, actually. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is funny how it happened because when I moved down to Florida and you stayed here, obviously we kept in touch, but you kind of went a whole different direction with your life and than the direction you were going in. And then so did I. I went a whole different direction with my life at the same time, but neither of us talked to each other about the fact that we were doing these things. The direction you went led you to where you're at now, where you're you're the head pastor of a church here in South Georgia. And then at the time I was doing music ministry for my church. So we were both serving in our churches in different ways. Tell me how you, what made you want to do that? I mean, like, how did you come to decide, all right, I'm going to be a pastor now?
Well, that came from whenever I was saved. That happened after my mama had died. Mm-hmm. And I started going to church, and from there, I realized my need for salvation. Mm-hmm. And having done that, I started to look into the scriptures. I started to read as much as I could. Mm. And I found that I could take from it a good understanding. And I had so much enjoyed going to church to hear the preaching, but more than that, Sunday school, that type of setting, to where I could hear it being taught. And before long, I was given input into the Sunday school class. And before long, people started coming to me, asking me questions, which I found very exciting. I loved it. Mm-hmm. And so eventually, I started in teaching a Sunday school class. And beyond that, it just became abundantly apparent to me that I needed to be preaching. And that became from a desire. I was basically already preaching sermons in my own head or driving down the road in my truck.
Sure. And
it needed to come out. And so I put it forth and was given opportunity. And remaining in the same church that I was at, it came about that I was given the opportunity by the church and by the Lord to be the pastor there.
Interesting. So you got a good reception there?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I would say, as far as the church is concerned, I am a part of that body of believers. Right. And so it is with great love for them and great love for the Lord that I serve there.
Do you think it helped with you having been a member of the church and just like essentially being just a church member and going to church and kind of growing up in that church for a while with those people? You think that helped with the transition at all?
Yeah, it definitely did. There is ups and downs to that, as there is with everything. And I certainly did see the downsides right up front of having already been a member of the church there and already having established relationships, rather than coming in cold, not knowing anybody, and starting a pastoral relationship that way. And so there is good sides and there's downsides to that. There's also the fact that our church had the previous pastor had been there for 35 years. And so, there's definitely bumps. It was a bit of a transition, but the Lord worked it out, and I'm grateful for what He's done.
So, how long have you been doing this now?
I've been pastoring the church for over 7 years.
7 years. Do you think that you've grown more just in your spiritual walk with the Lord by teaching and being a pastor than you would have had you just been under the leadership or headship of another pastor, just like a church member?
That's hard to say because obviously that's not what happened. But the benefits of being in the Word as a responsibility has certainly taken its toll on me in a good way.
You mean like just because you have this obligation to put together sermons, and so you're always in the Scripture because you have a job to do?
Yes, and not only that, but pastoral work in general, and dealing with different people in different stages of their maturity, and in different situations with different tragedies or celebrations. Being there to pastor and shepherd them certainly has played a great.
So you're talking about the ups and downs and the peaks and the valleys of life that we all have to walk through and that we find ourselves in. And you're going up and down these peaks and valleys with all these people and their own issues. It's hard enough for me to deal with my own issues, dude. Like, how are you dealing with everybody else's issues on top of your own stuff? Surely God puts you in your own peaks and valleys. That's where you grow, right? In the valleys.
That is where you grow. And
so how do you handle just dealing with so many different people and their problems?
That comes from a necessity of having a strong support, a strong support of other leadership in the church, a strong support of your wife. That's huge. And an absolute leaning on the Lord for His provision in doing what He's called you to do.
So you see the church from all these different angles now that you're a pastor. I mean, angles that even I've seen through just my service, serving, but that I don't really like very much, if I'm being honest. The business side of church, the politics side of church. How do you deal with that? Because I know you, just like you just said, you have a support staff, right? And these guys come alongside of you and they try to help kind of guide things, help you make the best decisions for the church, and you guys kind of all make these decisions together, I'm assuming. How do you deal with all these different... Look, we played in a band together. There were 5 of us. 5 different opinions was all that it took to tear a band apart. So how do you and all these guys... Because with church, there's all these different... there's these little differences of opinions. There's differences in the way people should do things, or the way people view things, or the way people believe in a lot of cases. So with all those differences, does it get difficult, dealing with the business and the political side of church?
Yeah, it does. And in order to carry out that business side of it, there's almost a separation that you got to make in between what is ministry and what is necessary in order to keep this church, this local body of believers, as an organization continuing. Because we are a body and we are a church, but there is a function that needs to go along with that. And yes, sometimes there is directions that some want to go and others do not want to go. And so a resolve needs to be made. And sometimes that goes with compromise. Not compromise on the scriptures, but compromise in direction. And so with that, a my way or the highway approach I found is not a good thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it may be necessary if you're dealing with something doctrinal, because that if what you are standing on is based on the scriptures, then you must make that stand and not give on it any. But when it comes to the organizational structure, working with people the best you can, and understanding that who you are dealing with the church. You are dealing with God's people. You are dealing with people whom Jesus has saved, just like he saved you. You're dealing with people whom have the same spirit that you have dwelling within them. And with prayer and a strong desire to have God's will be done, then something can and will be worked out.
So it's faith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am amazed constantly about how there can be issues that will keep me up at night, where I don't know how this is going to happen, and I just give it to the Lord and I pray about it, and in a matter of no time and time again, he has worked it out. And so that there is another aspect to this ministry actually building on my faith personally, because I've seen him work and know that he will. And he's not always taking things the way I desired them to go.
Sure.
But it was his way, so I'm always accepting of it.
So people really are interesting. We just went through a big election season, and you've just seen people, absolute relationships being wrecked and destroyed over an election, over political figures. There are people actively calling out there right now for a discontinuation of family. Like, don't go see your relatives if they voted for Trump. What do you think about this, man? And I want to just preface this question with, here on the Southern Drawl Podcast, we have made mention multiple times leading up to the election that this election season was about more than just a man and a woman running for president, more than just Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, more than first woman, first felon, however you want to look at it. It was more than all of that, and all of that needs to be put aside, because really and truly one side is standing for what we believe to be anti-God, anti-morals, just the complete degradation of the moral fabric of society, whereas the other side was standing for the preservation of those things and the preservation of just good morals and good values and what I would call the biblical values, even though the country is far off of any sort of a biblical path in my mind. So you essentially were voting for good versus evil in this last election. And people didn't like me saying this. And I think we even had a few people call us out, like, oh, you guys are being ridiculous. It's not, you're calling one side evil while the other side is good and all this. And not really calling the individuals evil, calling the actions in which they stood for, and the principles and the ideologies.
Yeah. And I mentioned this in the sermon the other day. There is an ideological divide. And by that, there's a system of ideals that frames the way we think and the way we act and even the way we feel. And whenever this ideology grabs us, it can overwhelmingly consume us. And whenever we have two ideologies, as we do in this country right now, one speaking for liberalism, one speaking for conservatism, or rather progressivism and conservatism. If that is there, then these are diametrically opposed. And so whenever you have people who have been taken over with an ideology to the extent that they cannot talk to, they cannot work with, just like I was talking about earlier in dealing with the church, we have to work with each other. And one reason that we can do that is because we are built in the framework of salvation in Jesus Christ and the scriptures being his word, right? We can work together in that way. And we can work together with like-minded people, even if they're not Christians, even if they don't have the Spirit of God. We can work with them so long as there is an ideological framework that we can work on together. If they are consumed by something that is opposed to that, then they cannot work with us and we cannot work with them. If we continue with that type of mentality in this nation, then that will strengthen it will solidify the divide even further. There has to be some sort of framework that even though you have these two ideologies, we can still move forward with the same ideals. And finding that is going to be key to moving forward in a good direction in this nation.
Do you think there's any like-minded ideologies left to bind the two, to join the two sides at this point?
I would say that nationalism.
But half the country hates the country.
Yes. Yeah. And so I don't know. I don't know what that is. All I know is that I have myself and my family and my home, and I have this church that I watch after. And it is my desire to make sure that we move forward in the right way, and that is the way of Christ, the way of the Scriptures.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If I could be at the top levels of society and start to build some sort of framework that could take all of the nation together, I don't know what that would be.
Yeah. You mentioned you have a family. You have a wife and 2 daughters and a son. Beautiful family. Very smart girls. Very rambunctious little boy, which is awesome. How do you support your family just from your pastor's salary, or do you work another job?
No, I work another job.
I know you do. What do you do? Tell us about it.
I work for the city of Albany in the engineering department. I work in civil engineering.
Okay.
Technically, you cannot consider me an engineer. I do not have the degree to be of such, but I work with engineers in order to get plan specifications and projects done for infrastructure.
Gotcha. So you do all of your pastor stuff on the side?
Yes.
Do you think that your kids enjoy having a pastor for a dad? Is it fun being a pastor's kid?
I've heard it both ways.
Both ways.
I do think that my children, and I'm super glad for this, my children and my wife, they do support me, even though it does get hard. It gets extremely tough sometimes.
Yeah.
And they are there, and they have been crucial to my continuation in this. And so I'm grateful to them.
Have you been talking a lot about the political stuff going on, either with your family or the church, or you guys?
At home, more so.
Yeah.
At home, more so. We don't really get into the political aspects of things at church. We focus on worship and on the Word of God. We have an expositional type ministry at our church, and so we focus on whatever passage we have, and so we believe that the Lord leads in that direction with us, and so we whatever the next passage is, that's what we're going to focus on, and no matter what the big news of the day might be, this word that we have here in front of us, that is our focus. And so if it is relevant, then I do bring it up. But it's not a big focus. Now, of course, in the home, we do talk about the issues. I want my children, I want my wife, so far as I understand things, to be able to understand what's going on and how to view the world, especially my children, so that and my 2 older girls, so that whenever they are dealing with people, either at college or at work or at school, they can they can understand just what it is that they're dealing with. And I want them to grow up with a worldview and see that what's going on in the world doesn't always line up with what their worldview is.
Sure.
And how do we properly respond to that?
So your girls go to public school.
Yeah.
You guys have encountered some of the shenanigans that have been pushed on the public school systems over the last 4 years or so. Mm-hmm. Has that had a big impact on the kids, or they have just kind of taken it with roll with the punches type mentality?
To roll with the punches. And here in South Georgia, and the school system is not what you find whenever you look at some of the shenanigans that you see in other parts of the country. It's simply not there. And there are some very wonderful, good-hearted Christian teachers in the school system, and but at the same time, this problem that we're speaking of, it's endemic. It doesn't just invade the school system. It invades society, and it reaches everywhere. And so that's one of the reasons why we currently, my son, we homeschool. But as for my two daughters, one was senior year, and so she just graduated. I have a sophomore daughter, and it just seemed right to just let her. They have a good head on their shoulders.
Yeah,
and they can understand things correctly. The issue is I don't want them to be taken in by an ideology that will form them apart from what is true and what is right.
Right.
And so in order to get that protection, I don't know if the problem is going to get worse. Mm-hmm. Sure, it's not bad where we are right now, but is it going to get worse? Lord, I hope not.
You think that the currently elected administration will change that? Or gives us the best chance?
Certainly gives the best chance.
Yeah, I think everybody gets hung up on this idea that if you're a MAGA supporter or if you voted for Trump, then you're some kind of Trump's your savior, or you think that he's like some kind of a god or whatever. Dude, this is the most ridiculous thing to me. I believe in the movement. I believe in the direction that we are trying to go and take the country in. And if this dude is the dude that's leading it right now, then I'm behind him for that. I want him to take this forward. But he's got 4 years. He's got 4 years, and then I need somebody else right behind him ready to pick up the reins and take us in that positive direction. So that's what I think people misunderstand. This isn't about Donald Trump. This is about the movement that he represents, which is America First. It's the preservation of our history and our way of life and our longstanding traditions. These are the things that are interesting to me. These are the things that motivate me to vote in this direction. Not a man, not any smooth talker. I mean, he can say the things he wants to say. They all just get up there and run their mouths about a bunch of garbage, say whatever they can say to make them popular. So it's not a man that gets my attention. It's the whole idea behind the guy, right? And so we look at this guy and the ideology that he represents and the values that he stands to represent and the things that he's trying to accomplish. Yeah, dude, it's all in line with essentially with life as we've known it, our entire lives growing up, for sure. But also in preservation of that lifestyle, this America First agenda that you mentioned nationalism earlier. And like I said, I think there's a great majority of the country that doesn't really even care about this country anymore. But there's a great majority that does, that absolutely does care about the nation, cares about the country, cares about preserving all those things. And I think that they stood up in a big way, One other way to save and unite the world, though, I think, do you believe in aliens?
I can't say that I do believe in aliens.
Well, why not? The United States government is literally coming out and admitting that there's something going on here. UFOs are real. They don't know how they are being powered. They don't know who's driving them. There's even high-ranking officials that have gone as far as saying that they believe that we're dealing with beings from outside of Earth, more intelligent than us.
And to hear things coming like that out of a congressional hearing.
Yes, this is a congressional hearing. I'll put a little clip of it in there to show you guys what I'm talking about.
Mr. Elizondo for his opening statement.
Greetings, Chairwoman Mace, Chairman Grothman, Ranking Members Connolly and Garcia, and members of the committee. It is my honor and privilege to testify before you on the issue of unidentified anomalous phenomenon, formerly known as UFOs. On behalf of our brave men and women in uniform and across the intelligence community, as well as my fellow Americans who have awaited this day, thank you for your leadership on this important matter. Let me be clear. UAP are real. Advanced technologies not made by our government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe. Furthermore, the U.S. is in possession of UAP technologies, as are some of our adversaries. I believe we are in the midst of a multi-decade secretive arms race, one funded by misallocated taxpayer dollars and hidden from our elected representatives and oversight bodies.
And I understand that there's a need in some cases to keep certain technologies secret. But you believe that it is posing a threat to our personnel, correct?
Yes, sir. The government executive branch not sharing with Congress what it knows about UAP infringes on your legislative and oversight responsibilities to such an extent that's very concerning. I mean, what else are we, if you look at national security or intelligence or foreign affairs or appropriations, you all have oversight and legislative responsibility regarding those. This UAP issue may be the greatest issue of our time, and it's being hid from you.
My concern, whether this technology emanates from us or otherworldly, that we know that we possess it. What are the guarantees that if this were to fall in enemy hands, that it isn't immediately weaponized against us? And I'll say this, it is clear from my experience and what I've seen that there is something out there. The question is it ours? Is it someone else's? Or is it otherworldly? And Madam Chairman, I would posit that as the legislative body, as the regulatory body, we must know. And anyone who prevents us from gaining access to that information, I would consider that criminality. Because we have U.S. personnel who may very well be in harm's way. We have technology that ultimately may threaten our very existence.
It certainly does pique your interest. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're not talking about these silly things that people have said and talked about abductions and things like that in the past, or these crazy conspiracy theories.
But those things don't sound so silly if these things are real.
Right. It gives it teeth. One of the strangest things to me is that nobody is talking about that.
About what?
About the fact that they are these things that they.
Oh, you mean it's not a big deal?
Hearing. Yeah, it's not a big deal.
You're right.
Nobody is saying anything about it.
Yeah, nobody cares, it seems like.
That news is huge.
For so many years, I remember growing up, I'm like, man, is there anybody out there? You know? And now here they're saying, yep, there's somebody out there. And we're just like, all right, cool. Sure. Let's move on with our life. Gas is high. Milk is high. I got time to deal with aliens right now.
Yeah. Whenever they start affecting the gas prices, then we'll care, I guess.
So if aliens are real, and they really are real, and they come here, then what? What do we do? What do we do next? As Christians, what do we do next?
As Christians, if we look and we see aliens land on this planet.
Yes, that's what I'm asking. What do we do then?
My theology doesn't change at all.
Good. I don't think mine does either. I keep hearing these people say, as soon as they make they admit that there's aliens, there'll be no more need for Christians. Like Christians, their whole worldview will just collapse on them, I guess.
No,
somehow.
No. I mean,
I'm like, I don't know how you get that. So do you think? Okay, so I've talked to several people about this, a couple of pastors as well, and a couple of pastors that I know believe and will tell you that just because you don't believe that aliens are in the Bible doesn't mean that you just haven't been reading your Bible from the wrong perspective, from the wrong viewpoint. Maybe
taking the Tucker Carlson approach.
Essentially, Tucker Carlson's brought this up recently as well.
Yeah.
The Bible itself talks about these things, right? That could be perceived to be UFOs or alien encounters. So maybe God's been telling us all along that these things are real and that they're out there. One of my pastors that I spoke to about this even says, when the day it happens, I'm going to be ready to start ministering and preaching the gospel to these beings because God made every being in existence and he died for all of our sins. And I'm like, wow, I guess if they're intelligent beings, then we might have to be spreading the gospel.
On the sixth day, he created man and he made him in his own image.
Yeah.
And
when did he create angels?
The angels he had created at a time in the beginning. That's what I can say.
Mm-hmm. When did that whole storyline with Lucifer in the garden and all that play out?
That would take place, where we're looking at the angelic realm, we're looking at the spiritual realm. Mm-hmm. And as we reach Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and there he created the physical realm. Now, and it was also at that time that God created time. It was in the beginning, and that's when the clock started ticking. And so God, not being bound by time, all I can say is at some point in the beginning. That's all I'm going to say.
I know. I wish I could put some timelines on it. I'm right in line with you. I totally believe all this stuff that you're saying as well. I just love to pick people's brain about it because, these are the skeptic questions. They'll ask you, okay, well, what about X, Y, and Z then? So the Bible does give us so much information, but I don't believe that we're meant to know everything. I think some of this stuff is meant for us to find out or to be told about or enlightened on when we stand with God, right? When we're in his presence.
Agreed.
But I think there's also a wealth of information out there that we don't view with the right set of lenses on, right? And I think because we do that, we end up missing a lot of what God did actually provide. Like, let's just take the UFOs, for instance. If they've been in existence for thousands of years, then it makes absolute sense that maybe they are in the Bible. Maybe we have been looking at a chariot of fire as something other than what it is.
In that instance, these otherworldly things being angelic hosts and demonic spirits coming in and interfering. And very well could be.
Think about this. The other day, during your sermon, you said, make no mistake, the devil prowls around like a lion looking for someone to devour. And when he finds someone with, weak soul, weak-minded, whatever, who are essentially susceptible, he pounces and he takes advantage, and he will do all that he can do to destroy that life, to use it up, to use it to his purposes, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, so to suggest that these beings aren't, you can't say that without also acknowledging that, yes, these beings do interact with human life. They do interact with our day-to-day, right? So if we believe that is true, these powers, these beings are able to interact with our lives. Paul said we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but with spirits and principalities from an unseen realm. I think the unseen part doesn't mean that we absolutely cannot see it. It means that we just don't see it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And if that's the case, then that stands to suggest that maybe even though we don't see it, we could see it. I mean, obviously these beings made themselves visible to humans in biblical times. But I always go back to the shepherds in the field. So the shepherds are in the field tending their flocks late at night, and all of a sudden the sky's filled with lights. And these sky people come down out of these lights and tell them about the birth of Jesus, you know? And it's like, what a miraculous moment. Now they just describe them as sky people, essentially. I mean, these people came down from the sky.
A heavenly host.
Heavenly host. A heavenly host. What is a heavenly host? Sky people, man. It's sky people. So you can call them angels. I think you could also safely call them aliens at this point in our life. And I think that's by design. I think that the world doesn't want us to call them what they are. I think we want to think of them as alien because alien is something foreign and weird and something that's not good, right? Mm-hmm. We've even painted on all of these movies and everything, alien bad, right? Aliens are not good. That's a scary thing we don't want to deal with. But if they're angels, and they truly are just angels, then why are we making people scared of these angels, I guess, is the point. We don't want people to buy into this idea, right? That they could be helpers or they could be whatever. But likewise, if there's angels, sky people coming down, heavenly host types, what about the ones that were thrown down to the earth?
Mm-hmm. And that's where it gets dangerous. Mm-hmm. You're now dealing with things that you cannot understand. All we know is what we know and what God has revealed to us. Mm-hmm. And so when we reach into the realm of speculation, and we basically form doctrine off of that, that's where we can be easily susceptible to one of these satanic attacks, where he will pounce and he will take. When we have an open mind to the extent that we are desirous to believe things, even though we don't have solid evidence for it. In other words, we can easily be deceived into believing that we're following after light when we're walking into a gaping mouth.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I agree with that statement. So aliens are real then, is what you're saying.
Angels and demons are real.
Angels
real as you can believe
are real, but not aliens. What about lizard people?
Lizard people. Well, I got to tell you.
I think lizard people are the demons.
You think so you do believe that
it's possible.
People have seen lizard people.
Yes.
And in high places. Mm-hmm. And
I've seen them, bro. Are you not watching this you haven't seen this on TV?
No.
I mean, you can tell they're evil just by looking at them. They look like lizard people.
Don't ever do it. Don't ever feel sorry for yourself. Don't ever do it. Absolutely stunning. This delicious. It is so good. And he will be like Moses, and he'll live 120 years. And he said, yeah. Preach it, brother, preach it, brother, preach it. Just before the cross. And we have a healing covenant. Dwells in me, the pure, spotless blood of God. And hesed was performed for me. He's is my blood brother, and my father is my friend.
So, I wasn't expecting to go here.
I can tell. Sorry.
So
I love talking about lizard people.
So, lizard people are fun. If that is indeed the case, then we're looking at demonic activity here. I do believe that there are absolutely there are demonic hosts that are infesting people today, to the extent that they are pure evil. Demonic possession is real. It's not what you see like in possession movies, like The Exorcist and that type of thing. Demonic possession, as we see it in the scriptures, and as we understand it, is that these beings possess, as in they have a great influence over people that they take. Just like myself, I have the Spirit of God living in me. And the Spirit of God leads me, He guides me, He influences the way I think and the way I understand things. And so the evil side of the spiritual realm can do that as well.
So like in the Bible when Eve was led astray in the garden, and Adam was there too, not doing anything to help. You don't think that was a lizard person?
It was a serpent.
That's what I'm saying. It was a serpent that could speak and talk to her, and he was cunning. More cunning than the other lizard people, apparently. Okay, no, I'm just joking. There's probably not lizard people. But the government is confirming UFOs and alien spacecrafts. So what do we do with that?
Look on with interest and enjoy the show. Carry
You think
on
it's
with
just a
your
show?
ministry.
That brings me to another great point. If it's just a show, there's speculation out there in the conspiracy realms that believe that it is just a show, that all of this UFO stuff is just a show. All of these world problems that we're seeing, it's all just a show. And it's all for a reason, right?
Red flags.
Red flags. Or false flags.
False.
Yeah, so false flags. And why? Why do the false flags? Well, to get people looking in one direction while you're pulling a fast one in another direction, right? So what is what's the deal with aliens and conspiracy theories? I sent you a link to watch a video on Project Bluebeam. Did you watch it?
I did.
Such a good, it's one of my favorite conspiracy theories, actually. You mentioned that you watched it and you found it intriguing. But it led you down this road to think that none of the UFO stuff is probably real. It's probably all man-made.
I would be more inclined to believe that than that there are UFOs that are defying the laws of physics floating around in our atmosphere and just not doing anything but drawing our attention. That's all that's happening.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting that there's been no contact or any kind of significant moments.
Everything that
revelation moments.
Everything that is being testified about in Congress is events that took place that drew attention. And that's all that they do.
I think they're setting the groundwork for a bigger story for later. Project Bluebeam suggests that they will build up this idea that aliens are real, then they will stage an alien invasion. And they'll do all this. Why? Because I think it was FDR said the greatest way to join the world population, humanity as a whole, is to have a common enemy, like an alien invasion. The people would unite around humanness. What is the word I'm looking for there? Humanity. Yes, goodness gracious. I was looking for another word. Whichever. All right, humanity would unite together under that one common denominator. We're all humans.
Yeah, of course. We've all seen Independence Day.
Yeah,
and we've seen how the world responded.
You see how the world responded. Yeah, I mean, think about that. You know, I will not go silently into the night.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's it. We're going to rally around that dude, and he's going to be the president, and then it's going to become one big world power that takes over the world. But it will be all by human design, right?
Yeah.
I don't like it, man. I don't like it.
If that is the case, it'd all be by human design, demonic influence, satanic leadership.
Do you think the people could be so easily swayed into believing a hoax like that? You know what I mean?
Of course.
I mean, because in there it says not only do they fake an alien invasion, but they also will fake new religious deities, or essentially all the major religious deities will all merge into one, and that will form one new world religion, right? Mm-hmm. That all people will adhere to. Mm-hmm. They'll all support it and buy into this new religion. And they do this by broadcasting these messages both visually, where you can see them, but also audio. You can hear the essentially hear thoughts in your head, or hear your God speaking to you. So you think the whole world would be easily swayed? Do you think you would be swayed by that if suddenly you could hear the voice of God speaking directly into your inner mind?
At the end of Matthew chapter 24, Jesus says for us to watch. Mm-hmm. Because they will be going out to deceive.
Right.
And if God allowed it to continue, they would deceive everyone, even if possible,
the elect. Mm-hmm.
Being God's people, God's chosen people that he has called, we may be able to be influenced to a degree, but we're not going to be deceived. We cannot and will not. A true believer does not deny Christ. A true believer does not leave Jesus for the sake of a false religion. Now, there will be many who do fall away, but they will go out from us because they were not of us. And so, no, that's the answer to the question is no. I won't, because God will not allow for that. Not that there's some kind of strength in me that I could overcome it. No, sure. I am weak, but Christ will see to it.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. You know, we see all this stuff going on now, but I feel like more and more they're just laying the groundwork for some of these things that were once just nut job conspiracy theories. Now they're just getting to be more and more possibilities, conspiracy truths, as we call them in our house. Isn't that right, babe?
Well, you do see a number of things that line up. We're talking about a great deception that takes place, followed by a great falling away of the church, leading to a one world religion that is therefore led by a confederacy over the world. One man, of course, will be at the helm of that. They're able to do that because of the deception that they do. The World Economic Forum working out the grand deal to where there's one world currency. You see a lot of things from that video that you sent, laid out in this Project Bluebeam. It's interesting that you do see a lot of things lining up with the futuristic look at the book of Revelation and other end times prophecies in the scriptures. So I do find that interesting. As for Project Bluebeam itself, I'm not entirely convinced that, that's definitely gospel. No, I'm not. But I do see a number of things in there that have a good bit of validity to them.
Sure.
And for me, it's just a matter of, like I said earlier, enjoying the show.
Yeah, I got you. Do you believe in Bigfoot?
Why wouldn't I?
Why wouldn't anybody believe in Bigfoot?
Exactly.
I don't understand. Like, there's so much good evidence.
We've seen the video.
Seen that video? I mean, there's so much good evidence. Well, I mean, because some people believe that Bigfoot's actually just an alien, an interdimensional being, just like these other aliens and these UFOs. And so they're coming in and out of these ethereal planes or these other dimensions. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So if you've got like a portal that opens up and then suddenly this Bigfoot can come out and hunt for a little while and gather or whatever and then goes back to its portal to wherever.
Normal in the other world.
What's that?
He's normal in the other world. Draws a lot of attention here, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, over there they don't call them Bigfoot. They just call them
Foot.
feet. I mean, you know, but so there's people that think they're aliens. So if they're aliens, there's people that think there's all kinds of different aliens, all right? Mm-hmm. Like, I've heard up to like 27 different species of aliens that visit Earth regularly. Like, some of them are like these gray aliens like that you see. Some of them are Bigfoots, for instance. Some of them are like insects, like giant grasshoppers and whatnot. And on and on and on. There's lots of these stories. Have you seen, you mentioned Mr. Ballin, we were watching that when you came in. Have you seen the Missing 411 series that he did? It follows a guy that wrote the books. What's his name? He's a detective. Gosh, I can't remember his name right now. Scott something or... I'll put it in the description below because I can't remember. But anyway, Missing 411, you should look that up. It's a whole series. There's the guy, he's a former detective, and he got interested in these missing person cases and started investigating these missing person cases that were taking place inside of state parks and national parks and stuff like that around the United States. A lot of these cases, these people disappear under very mysterious circumstances. The reason I bring that up is because some people believe that they are a perfect example of what we're talking about with these portals that open up and these beings that come in and then these people that just go missing for long periods of time and end up like somewhere else altogether that they shouldn't have been able to travel to in such a short span of time or whatever. Do you think time travel or portals or any of that, you think any of that's real, man? Like any of it, any of that stuff is actually happening?
It's a fine theory.
You have not looked into this enough. I'm telling you, I could open your world to like a whole different. Well, I mean, think about it. We just mentioned a minute ago that angels and demons are part of an unseen realm. Mm-hmm. So it's not. I mean, it's not without saying that these realms exist, right?
Right.
So I'm just wondering, is there any kind of maybe there's things there that we're just totally not aware of that leak over and bleed through from time to time.
Possibly. I really got nothing to add to it.
It's one word answer.
So if that is the case, that we have an alternate dimension of sorts, whereby Bigfoot and others and creatures can go back and forth between the realms, sure. I would say that ultimately that is interesting at best.
Not important.
Kind of talks about that a little bit.
Who?
Job. The book of Job.
Mm-hmm.
So the question was, folks, doesn't the book of Job possibly talk about some of this?
Well, the book of Job talks about a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And how you interpret that, especially some of these hard to interpret passages, you can certainly take it and pull some pretty wild things. If you come to the book of Job looking very literally instead of at it with the poetic sense that it comes in, and and with preconceived notions, then you can really pull out some very strange things and then say that the Bible justifies this that I'm saying is true.
Gotcha. But taken it out of context.
Yeah.
Makes sense. What about the Dead Sea Scrolls and like the Book of Enoch, for instance? Do you think, I mean, obviously these are extra biblical scripts and tablets.
Well, say the Book of Enoch is very important, and I'm not going to say that it should never be looked at, should never be listened to. Leave the Book of Enoch alone. I'm not going to say that, but I do understand that we need to see that for what it is. It is extra biblical. It is a very, very old document, which says some very strange things. But it does say things that, especially concerning salvation, that is contradictory to what God has revealed in the 66 books that we have. And so with that, you need to look at it with that type of understanding. We actually do have Jude in the New Testament that gives credence to the Book of Enoch and giving reference to that. And so we see that the early church and certainly the Jewish people before that did take that book with some serious. And so with that, whenever we read and we see the issues that the Book of Enoch brings up, and we see some of the doctrinal elements of it, I'm not saying that we should just throw it out, but I'm not saying that we should wholeheartedly accept it. We should look at it with interest.
What about the 7 books of the Catholic Church that are not in your typical Protestant
Well, the same.
teaching?
The same. Most of those I've not read, so that really puts me out of league in saying. But I do know that based on church history and the established early church, they have declared that those do not. Well, not the. I don't know too much about that early church formation of the scriptures there, but I can say this: it is not widely accepted that those are part of the scriptures, that God has indeed inspired those books that we have. But they can be taken in the sense that they are old documents that give us information that we need to know in order to better understand the past, such as 1st and 2nd Maccabees. They fill in that time period in between what we have in our Old Testament and what we have in our New Testament, and let us know what was going on.
True.
And so to look at those and say they're not important is a ridiculous statement, but they're not scripture.
Gotcha. So let's talk about another one of my favorite conspiracies. Is the Earth flat or is it round?
The Earth is round.
Round,
like a sphere.
There's a lot of pilots out there that say that that may not be true. Yeah, they don't never see the curve of the Earth as they're flying, and some other things I've seen. But let me ask you this then: if the Earth is round or flat, whichever, can we get to outer space?
I hear a lot of evidence saying that we can't, but then I see evidence.
I live on the Space Coast. I watch a lot of rockets fly up.
Yeah. We go up into space.
Do we, though? There are people that believe that they're just shooting them rockets over and they're just curving over and going back down into the ocean. Ocean is space. We can't
they shoot up in the air and they curve, but that's because they're going out into orbit.
Well, we can't get through the firmament, they say.
If we never actually sent anybody into space because we can't because of a radiation belt,
Sure.
I think is what they say, and nobody's actually on the space station. And
Well, okay, so understand the distinction. So there is what's called low Earth orbit. Okay, and low Earth orbit is between Earth's surface and the Van Allen radiation belt. So outer space is essentially outside of that radiation belt.
okay,
So if you're in low Earth orbit, you don't have to travel through that radiation belt, and you can just continue to orbit Earth at a low level. That's where the space station is. That's where a lot of our satellites are, all within low Earth orbit. What is not in low Earth orbit is the moon. So you may have heard, actually, if you will watch that Congress or that congressional hearing where they're talking about UFOs, one of the scientists actually says, speaking about these UFO crafts and how they're powered and the technology that they draw their energy from, would be very, very valuable to the United States, especially if it's coming from like an extraterrestrial source and no one else on Earth has that power. We would want to be the first ones to have it, rather than have it fall into like the hands of like our enemies, for instance. But then he kind of goes on to say that would enable us to win in this space race. Did you know there's a space race going on? Apparently there is a space race. I didn't realize that this was such a big thing, but they're apparently trying to beat China and I guess Russia probably and others, but they're trying to beat them to the moon, which is interesting to me because haven't we done this before?
sounds very familiar, doesn't it?
Why are we trying to beat a nation back to the moon? And they don't say back to the moon. They just say to the moon. But he says that in that interview, he says that might give us the capability and the technology to finally put someone on the moon before China or someone else gets there. And it's very interesting to word it that way because have we been to the moon? Mm-hmm. The moon is outside of those radiation belts.
Yeah,
so
well, if
scientists for years from other countries have argued that it's not possible to pass through those. Now, then again, you've got some scientists from those same countries that are claiming they're trying to go to the moon. So,
well, I can't go up there and fly past the Van Allen radiation belt and tell you for certain.
Sure.
So all we can do is speculate based on what people say, and it's very simple. If that is true, that no person can pass through there and live, then nobody went to the moon.
Sure.
And it appears that nobody is going to go to the moon. Unless there's something that can be done. But if we can, and it's safe, then yes, then we have an outright validity that we did go to the moon that time.
Sure. It seems that we've been placed in this spot that we're in this time that we're in so that we cannot extend ourselves past a certain point. Well, I mean, like, think about it. If there's aliens on Centauri 23 or whatever, that planet's like hundreds of light years away, thousands even, of light years away, a speed that we cannot travel for a time that we cannot survive, right? So it seems like everything is outside of our ability for contact. And that seems to be on purpose, you know what I mean? I mean, you got Elon Musk trying to go to Mars, which is fine. I mean, Mars is not that far away considering, how far things are in space. But it seems like we, almost like God, limited us in our ability to reach out to certain points. Even with the technologies we have today, we just can't get out, can't get certain distances, right? We can't make those connections. Maybe that's for a reason. Some people argue, though, that you can't get up there because the firmament blocks the way. It's a solid, and you can't just blast through a solid.
I haven't heard that.
Yeah, I've read a lot of people going down that route. That God created the firmament, and the firmament is there, and you can't penetrate it.
Well, you can go back to the Tower of Babel, and there you find that God looked down upon the men that he had established and said to spread out, fill the earth, and they did not. And they were working together to establish this government, and they were building this tower. And God said that we need to go down and confound their languages, because they can attain great things, well beyond what I'm desiring them to do. I'm going to confound their languages and make them do exactly as I intended them to do to begin with. Look, we have restraints everywhere. It's human nature that we need restraint. Without restraint, we would be vile.
Yeah.
We need the family. We need government. We need the church. We need our own consciences in order to restrain us, and to look at our existence and say that yes, it's obvious that God put geographical restraints on us as well. It's not out of the way to say.
So you don't believe there's an ice wall down around Antarctica, and then there's more land outside of that?
No.
We're just not being told about?
That's a fantasy world.
Come on, man. What about Thor?
Yeah, he has
What
to
about
go from
Asgard?
somewhere, doesn't he?
Yeah, Asgard's one of the places, I think.
Really?
I really do. I think that's one of the lands outside of Antarctica. If I'm not mistaken. Isn't it? I'd have to look it up. But I don't know. There's this whole map that shows. So
I've seen it.
yeah, so it's like a circular ice wall, and this is our whole little world. But then outside of that, it's other lands, and it just expands.
And everything's wonderful and beautiful out there.
I don't know. There's probably conflict, I would assume, just like there is here now.
Yeah, that stuff's fun to look at. And
Well, they say, like, comic books and stuff like that, the idea had to come from somewhere. Maybe there's an element of truth. I think that the government is constantly giving us elements of truth in our movies and our TV shows and stuff like that. They give us just a little bit of the truth and wrap it all into a fun, entertaining TV show or movie so that we don't think of it as anything more than fiction.
so you don't think that we really, truly can have any original thought?
Can we have original thought?
Right.
I mean, yeah, I think we can as individuals. Yeah. But as groups, I think, no. Not as groups. Because as groups, groups are always going to do some very predictable things, I think. They're always going to align with a certain sociological viewpoint or set of viewpoints that kind of govern the flow of conversation within the group. And then that alignment with those social norms is going to lead down one road or another, and the group is going to become this thing that, look, all throughout time, our governments haven't been that different. I mean, think about that. They really haven't. Like our governments, even our government systems, yeah, they change, they're different, they do things a little different. We're more modernized, than people that came before us, but all in all, you can look back through the pages of history, and this governance of, strong, powerful men governing poor, weak men, men fighting in battles and armies over similar things, land, money, power. I mean, it's groups are always going to kind of go down the same road, I think.
So predictable.
Yeah.
So do you think that if we're talking conspiracies here, do you believe that there's other false flags that we have seen?
That we've seen?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, lots lately. Yeah, there's a big agenda, I think, that they're trying to push right now. Like, exactly what it is kind of hard to nail down. I mean, it depends on which conspiracy circles you're looking at. But I think that there's definitely stuff going on. And I think a lot of it's boiling to the surface right now that we're going to probably start seeing. because I don't think we're the only ones that were truly trying to expose truth like this. But yeah, I think there's definitely something happening that we're fixing to find out some big information over the next few years. Big stuff. I mean, what if, let's just put it like this. If Trump does come into office the way that he said he was going to, and he releases the JFK files, let's just suddenly we find out that this is how it happened. It happened like this. I mean, would certain it happened like thises have an impact on you and the way you look at your world?
It may affect to the degree that how I look at government and how much I'm going to trust anything that say with what little amount that I even listen to it now.
Sure. Should you trust your government? I mean, if suddenly you found out your government was behind the assassination of one of your presidents, if that were to come out, I'm not saying that's how it happened. Right. I really don't know, but I don't speculate much on the JFK one. I just don't know enough about it. But I do know that one of the big conspiracy theories out there is that our government killed JFK because they wanted to go to war and he didn't want to go to war. I mean, I don't even have to speculate about this. This is what RFK is saying. RFK is saying these things. So if that's how it happened and we find out that that is true, man, I mean, that doesn't instill a lot of faith in our government, does it? I mean, if they're willing to do that kind of stuff to a president, and then it starts making you wonder about all the other horrific conspiracies. 9/11. 9/11, did that really happen the way they told us? You know? We do know that our government faked an attack so that they could get into Vietnam. I mean, that actually happened. They faked an attack that didn't happen the way that they said it did. And then we went into the Vietnam War. We got involved in that against our will. There's speculation that they knew about the attack on Pearl Harbor long before it happened. Who's they? The upper people running the show up in the upper echelons of government. Mm-hmm. The deep state, if you will. Yeah. So if you've got a government in place now that wants to dismantle the deep state, and he's got a whole team of superhero-esque Avengers style, I mean, look, we got Tony Stark, bro. I mean, think about that. We've got Wonder Woman. I mean, it's pretty crazy what he's put together. It's going to be very interesting. But if they go in there specifically to dismantle the deep state and to expose all this corruption, how does that leave you feeling like moving forward on just pretty much anything government-wise or what it means to be an American, like all these things, you know? And to think that any of these things are far-fetched is hilarious to me that anybody thinks these things are far-fetched. Look at the Tuskegee experiments. We know that happened. I mean, yeah, you can call it racism all you want, but yes, it was racism. But it also was an attack of the government on American citizens. Yep. Just, I think, it could come out very soon that that's what COVID-19 was now. Very similar medical experiment on unknowing citizens and civilians.
If it were to be opened up that we see a lot of these false flags that supposed turn out to be not so supposed, but are true, would that affect me personally? Oh yeah, of course it would, because it would affect the nation as a whole, and there would need to be a reckoning that would take place, and there would be a call for accountability, and all of that would go on, and that would certainly affect the government down to the people. What matters the most, though, is what God has given to us and the responsibilities that we have at the local, normal level. Where my influence does reach and how I can use it to affect the ones that I love to go in the right direction. That's the primary concern. I think it's great that we have the ability to know as much as we do, thanks to the media that we have, and especially thanks to social media, to the extent that we have it. But I do think that it can take our minds away from what is most important and what we have right here in our homes, in our families, and in our churches. And so if aliens invaded the earth and we turned out that all of these red flags truly are red flags, and our government was terrible in how they dealt with us all those years, my theology would not change. My love for my family, my friends, my God, and my church would not change. And I would carry on to the best of my ability that I can in the new situation that's right there. That's all I can say. I see, when it comes to these conspiracies, whether they're real or not, it piques my interest because I just love reading about that kind of thing. I love watching the videos that people make.
I do too.
The flat earth stuff, I love watching that, even though I don't believe a lick of it. It's interesting.
Now, some of them I have bought into more and more as we go, as you dig into them more. But yeah, the vast majority of conspiracy theories are so much fun I like to just read into how people got to where they are with those beliefs.
Yeah.
Like because some of them are so far-fetched, bro. Like I get why people call them wackos. And I don't call them wackos. I don't even call them conspiracy theories. I just don't like it. I think, look, here's the thing, man. Like, people are shaped and they're affected and by these different things that they encounter and these different things that they experience, different things that they learn and that they're told. And it shapes their worldview. It shapes their reality of the way things are. And the more they go down this road and the more they dig and the more they connect dots to support their viewpoint, the more dug into it they're going to be, right? So I get it. I like these conspiracies because they are both fascinating and just so very well thought out in most cases. And when you go through all the steps, like, you can find yourself like, oh man, no what? Okay, all right, I get it. I get why you might think that way. I don't necessarily believe in a lot of this conspiracy theories, but some of these top ones, like we've mentioned today, Project Bluebeam and some other ones, I really think there's some legitimacy to some of them. I think some of them could be just outright true, like truly happening. Some of them, I think they're, like I told you before, they mix in enough truth with enough BS to get us to
believe all of it's baloney.
Right, to believe all of it's BS, exactly. But I in those cases, I think there's some instances where it's not baloney. It's not. It's actual truth, and they've just covered it up really, really well. But that being said, you're right. No, I'm more of a skeptic than I am a believer in most of the conspiracies, even though I do find the conspiracies to be really fascinating. Some of them, however, that really get my attention are the ones that, like you said earlier, seem to so closely align with Scripture, especially end times prophecy Scripture, like Matthew 24 or the book of Hebrews, I think. Is it Hebrews that has a conspiracy? But then obviously Revelation being the biggest one that people look at when they look at end times prophecy. Maybe it's 1 Peter I'm thinking about. I can't remember. Anyway, there's 3 books that I look at pretty regularly when I'm looking at the end times stuff. Matthew 24 and Revelation are 2 of the biggest ones. And yeah, some of these conspiracy theories kind of line up. They're not, that's what's funny is these people with the conspiracy theorists aren't religious people and they're not following the Bible and they didn't get it from the Bible and none of that. But they've come to these conclusions that these things are going to happen in these ways and this is what's happening behind the scenes and this is why it's happening and what it's supposed to be doing and all this kind of stuff. And I'm looking at it going, yeah, that's right out of Scripture. Everything that the Bible said would happen is kind of happening. I mean, you're a little off in the details, but you're spot on with the mission. You know what I mean? And I kind of think in those cases, I'm way more willing to wrap my head around the fact that there could be some real truth behind this. Mm-hmm. And Project Bluebeam, in a sense, hits some of those points. But it's not the only one. There's several other ones as well that come pretty close to that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about conspiracies, and we've talked about the Bible and how God's plan aligns with a lot of these things. So let's talk about what's ripping the world apart then. So the politics were very divided this time around.
Yeah.
You notice that some very hot topic issues. Like for me personally, some of my biggest issues were the border issues, things going on the border, the open border, all the illegal immigration that was going on. That was a big issue for me. The safety for my family. I mean, I don't feel like my girls can go anywhere safely the way that we used to be able to enjoy. It's not that way anymore.
Right.
You guys even had a couple of people here, a couple of ladies here in Georgia, the state of Georgia, murdered on account of this open border fiasco. Mm-hmm. Other issues, though, were also playing heavy into all these things. So a lot of times I hear people fighting back or pushing back at Christians. How could you elect this man? How could you, in good conscience, call yourself a Christian and elect Donald Trump as president? Now, they say this for various reasons, and a lot of them can be easily debunked and can be easily combated. You want to call the man a rapist. He's not a rapist. He's never been convicted of rape. He's actually never been accused or convicted of rape. So to call him a rapist is just simply untrue. The same thing can be said about many of the other things they call him. So that's neither here nor there for me. Now, they like to pretend like he's this abuser of women. And so as a man with daughters, and a Christian man, I should not be willing to elect a man like Donald Trump. What do you think about that?
We're looking at the president of the United States. Mm-hmm. We're not looking for a father figure. We're not looking for a pastor. We're looking at the president. And this president is given the responsibility of making decisions and leading the federal government of the United States in a way that is most beneficial to the people of the United States. Mm-hmm. That is the role of that position. Now, we want the best person in there for that. Mm-hmm. Ideally, you would want a good moral person. But if they don't hit all the check marks, that's fine. As long as what they are proposing is what lines up with what's important and especially what these hot button issues of the day are.
Right.
I'm looking for one that will bring the protections that are necessary. I'm more so paying attention to the issues that will affect my family the most. The border issue was huge, and it was huge for a reason. Mm-hmm. And whenever I would look on the news and I would see what was going on in these certain cities, and I would see where these apartment buildings were effectively being taken over, like it was a third world country, and nothing was being done about that. And we do see, even in a certain sense locally here in Georgia, such as the case with Lake and Riley, and there's a trial going on for that now, that can hurt my family. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to vote for the one that is going to not only boldly make the promises, but will have the gumption to actually act on the promises that are being made. I was presented with somebody who met both of those criteria, and I voted for him without any hesitation.
Did you see the clip where Kamala Harris threw some people out of her rally for shouting Christ is Lord?
Yes.
Do you think that had a big impact? Do you think that was a big turning moment for undecided Christian voters?
I would certainly hope so. I'd never seen any testimonials where somebody was saying, I'm a professing Christian, I was voting for Kamala, but then this happened and I've turned. I didn't see anything like that.
Sure.
But there had to be some, I would assume. But I can't say it was a great deal. I can't say that was something that turned the tables on the election. But I can say that was a pivotal marker for those who are, for the church in particular, to know where the Democrat Party stands.
I think it was also interesting that she would make this statement and that she would stand in opposition to these particular individuals with their message while she's preaching about, while she's literally standing there on stage advocating for abortion. Abortion was also a huge issue in this last election. I think the left thought that they could win the whole thing.
Yes, absolutely.
On the election issue or on the abortion issue. I feel like they believed, past tense, because I think it's probably obvious at this point that they believed incorrectly, that the nation as a whole would rally around this ability to make abortion as convenient as possible. They rallied around this idea. Mm-hmm. I think that the left can't, even now, many of them can't understand or fathom why people would be not supportive of abortion at this point.
Yes. And that stems from what we were talking about earlier with the ideological worldview shaping. There's this understanding that this being that is in the womb is not human, and therefore it's okay to eliminate it, and therefore the way that they phrase it, of course, is it's about women's health and reproductive rights, and those are the key words there. If indeed what is in the womb, this being, is indeed a human life. So if a baby is a human life, then that matters, and they don't see it that way. But there's also the aspect of human life being sacred. If human life is sacred, and these children in the womb are indeed human beings, and their life is sacred, then it's worth fighting for their lives. They can't understand that because they do not, one, see a child in the womb as a human being, nor do they see human life as sacred.
Yes, I totally agree with that statement, actually. And I was actually going to make that very statement to you. I feel like we've gotten to a point now where, especially people on the left, the progressive left, does not believe in the sanctity of human life at all at this point. Everything from experimentation on humans, like they have done, all the way up to the abortion thing. But then again, on the opposite end of that spectrum, you have this idea that elderly people are not as useful. They're not important because they're not useful, essentially. I'm not saying that's a widespread held belief by the progressives, but I do believe abortion is at this point. And I do believe that there are some other key aspects, such as the vaccination and this kind of stuff, that kind of lead this idea that there is no care for life in general. There's no appreciation of it. I'm going to show you a video, and I'm going to get your idea. So, but before I do, I want to ask you this question. Do you believe that Jesus himself looks at this abortion issue and finds goodness in it?
No.
No? Okay. All right, I'm going to show you a video, and then we can talk about this video. I should have went ahead and pulled it up, but, I like to do things on the fly. It just makes it more exciting. So we'll do this on the fly. History. You'd think I would know how to work YouTube?
Yeah, I would think.
But I struggle.
What are you looking for?
I'm looking for like the saved videos. Videos that I've saved. How do I find those? Watch later? Oh yeah, watch later. See, that was actually not easy to find. I mean, did you see how many menus I had to go through? That was crazy. This right here.
Do you want to see how much money you're eligible for? If you were in a car crash within the last 2 years.
Okay, I've covered a lot of insane sermons on this channel and bizarre things said behind the pulpit, and this, by far, tops the cake. And you guys have seen me cover drag queens and transformers and all of that preached behind the pulpit. This is by far the craziest. This is by far the worst. What you're about to hear is mind-boggling. We cover a lot of the Methodist Church, what they do, which is crazy stuff. This is a Presbyterian pastor of a United Presbyterian Church. What you're about to hear is it's unbelievable. It's actually unbelievable. So here we go. Just let's watch.
If Jesus were here today, he would be a clinic escort.
Let's make sure that we heard that. Let's just play that one more time. There's no way she just said that. And by clinic, she means an abortion clinic. Let's play that again.
If Jesus were here today, he would be a clinic escort, distracting women from the hatred of the protesters. Or an abortion.
This is so bizarre. This lady is not a pastor. This lady is a witch. Speaking forth demonic doctrine, promoting the child sacrifice agenda and doctrine. And she is, there's a fish on her pulpit. There's a fish on her pulpit. And she's a Christian Protestant Presbyterian preacher. And yet she's saying this foolishness, demonic foolishness.
Doula, holding women's...
He would be an abortion doula, she says. Jesus.
...hands and offering support and love as they end their pregnancies. And I expect he would have a stern word for self-righteous legislators who use abortion as a political issue rather than showing compassion for the people seeking abortions.
How ironic is that? She said show compassion for the people seeking abortions, but not show compassion for the baby being violently murdered inside the mother's womb. I know you guys you've been talking a lot about abortion. Yeah, we should also talk a lot about abortion.
I'll cut him out. You can say whatever you want. I'm just going to share a little bit of what she said and then get your reaction.
The problem with a lot of pastors is they're not talking about this stuff.
Today, on this Row Sunday, I wanted to share some of the stories we have collected because these are the sacred stories of women's lives. If Jesus were giving his sermon today, he might also have said, "Blessed are those who end pregnancies."
No way. She says Jesus would say, "Blessed are those who end their pregnancies." What demon is this? What spirit is this that preaches this type of nonsense?
For they will be known for their loving kindness.
Oh my goodness, guys, I'm at a loss for words. This doesn't happen often.
And given that 1/4 of American women will have an abortion by the age of 45,
That's so disturbing. 25% of women will have an abortion by age 45. That is so disturbing.
Imagine some of your reproductive journeys also include abortion. Blessed are those who end pregnancies, for they will be known for their loving kindness.
This is so demonic. I've honestly never seen something this demonic behind the pulpit. Please tell me there's nobody in this church. This is so evil.
Dropping off his...
This guys, we're in the last days. We're in the last days. This is just beyond wicked, beyond evil.
That's very close to.
Make your blood boil.
We're in the last days. So that's the gist of it. You get the idea. Thoughts? Do you think Jesus would be preaching a sermon? Blessed are those who end their pregnancies?
No, absolutely not. So what we have there is a woman pastor, which is a contradiction in terms, biblically speaking, proclaiming something that is not scripturally right and declaring that this is what God desires and defining what God would do. The God that she is proclaiming is not real. She is, of course, a false teacher. But we were speaking of demonic possession earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that right there is a clear case of what I was speaking of. So she said that she has been pregnant 4 times and she has 2 beautiful children.
Mm-hmm.
She has 4. She has 4 children and she has murdered 2 of them. That's just a fact. The unjust taking of life from the innocent, which God declared as evil back in Genesis chapter 9, and saying that when that happens, the death penalty, that's the severity of what we're looking at there. Now, I'm not saying that that's what should happen under our form of government. I'm not saying that at all. But I bring that up to indicate just how God feels about this. No, Jesus does not advocate for abortion. That is the unjust taking of an innocent life. And we as Christians need to vote for those who will not advocate for that wickedness.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, the current administration that was just voted in is not as strong on the issue as I'd like them to be.
Mm-hmm.
Me personally, I would be one of those Project 2025 radicals that they, at least to the extent that if I was put in charge, then yeah, I would use executive action to make a federal ban instantaneously. But I would never. But that's the landscape of where we're at. Because if I was running for president and that was my stance, I would have never been elected. Donald Trump would not have been elected, and the proof goes back to Election Day, whenever we seen that abortion was on the ballot in many states, including Florida.
Mm-hmm. And
there was an overwhelming support. Even in Florida. It did not pass in Florida, but there was a 57%. 57%. And in a lot of these states where abortion was on the ticket, Trump was on the winning side, abortion was on the winning side. That speaks to the moral landscape where we're at today. The moral landscape in the 2 issues that we're looking at, on whether or not what is inside the womb is a human being, mm-hmm. and the sanctity of human life.
Mm-hmm. So there was another big moral issue or rather social issue on the agenda this time around, this whole transgender movement and how it's pushing its way into every avenue of life, including women's locker rooms and women's sports. What's your take on the transgender issue?
Exactly what you think it would be. That God made them male and female, and
you don't think he made a mistake?
No.
Some of them? Of course not.
No,
I think you're right. I think that it's just that way. God made them male and female, and 2 genders, not as many as we can think of.
Right. There are 2 genders that God has made, and he did not make a mistake in creating these 2 genders, sexes, synonymous words, not to be taken differently. nor did he make a mistake in establishing male and female and how we are made and the way our minds work. We are created to be in this world with different roles.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever we try to subvert those roles, that's where sin enters the picture. And that's part of the curse. As the curse was laid down on Eve, he said that you will have a desire for your husband, but he shall rule over you. This desire for her husband is not a desire in a sexual desire or a loving desire towards him. It's a desire for his place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that sinful unction as part of the curse is where all of this is stemming from. The women's rights movement was never intended from the beginning to just end at some sort of equal rights as they saw fit. It was always intended to go for a subversion. And in a lot of respects, they have been extremely successful. But it has gotten to the point, I think that the movement got ahead of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were speaking about conspiracy theories earlier, and some of them just get wacky, and that's when people stop believing it. That movement got so wacky, so fast, that everybody
stopped supporting it.
Yeah. Let's
couldn't buy into it anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. It did have some traction for a little bit, but thanks to a lot of good work by a lot of good conservatives.
Do you think it had traction, or do you think people were just bullied into accepting it? Because I really don't think that it had the traction that it was portrayed to have. I think it was pushed really hard by the mainstream media and by the universities. You had a lot of loud voices from a small few people.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that that's what it was. And unfortunately, here on the conservative side of things, here on the right, people will have these kinds of conversations very strongly and very passionately sitting around their kitchen table, just like we're doing right now, but not in the mainstream world where it needs to be had,
mm-hmm.
where it needs to be, where there needs to be people saying, yeah, look, I see what you're trying to do there. No, we're not going along with that.
Yeah. Well, I think that we have a lot of light in front of us from the aspect of this past election has shown us that the people's trust in the traditional media format is starting to wane.
Thank goodness, too, because the mainstream media is lying to you. Just know they are lying to you. We'll try to give you truth here, but they ain't trying to give you no truth out there, guys. So tune in here. Like and subscribe. Share this video. Duder's job depends on it. So, actually, my job depends on it. So, like and subscribe. Sorry. Have to plug the channel.
Yeah.
No, I think you're exactly right. People are waking up to the fact that the mainstream media is lying. I believe people are done with it. Have you seen the latest? You have Joe Scarborough and what's her name? I can't stand her. Mika. Yeah, whatever her name is. Did you know they're married?
No, I had no idea.
Joe and Mika. Yeah, they're husband and wife. Anyhow, so Joe and Mika, or at least that's what I heard. Maybe I'm wrong about that. If I'm wrong about that, I apologize. That's the way I understood it. Anyway, yeah, what a weird marriage that must be. Not to be judgmental, whatever. I mean, you like what you like. Anyhow, point I'm trying to make is Joe and Mika been going on for weeks. Okay, here's what's hilarious. And Megyn Kelly pointed this out on one of her recent shows. They used to praise Trump back when their ratings were crap. Mm-hmm. This is not like 2019, I think. Maybe even 2015. Anyway, they used to praise Trump. And he would come on the show and he would do their show. But then when I guess it would have been 2015 when he first decided he was running as a Republican, that's when they turned on him, right? And he now all of a sudden since then they've just done nothing but bash him. Why? Because that's what gets ratings. So they bash him. They call him Hitler. They call him a Nazi. Or call him a fascist. Call him a racist. Call him a sexist. Call him every word in the book. And they are 100% bought into it, into just spreading this character assassination, right? But now here we are, just a week after the election, And now Mika and Joe went to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Trump. And we're going to be moving forward in a way that we try to communicate. Like, are you serious, man? What a 180 flip-flop. Why are you wanting to communicate with Hitler?
Yeah.
Why are you wanting to hang out and do interviews with this fascist, rapist dictator?
Because they are insincere and have been from the beginning.
Because they are liars, guys. Stop watching the mainstream media. They are liars. They are actors paid for. State media propaganda. Don't listen to it. Ain't no state paying me. Goodness gracious. But that is it, man. And that's it. And just that quickly they flip-flop back to whatever's popular and whatever's going to drive ratings and whatever's going to keep them afloat, right? Just nonsense. Propaganda, just propaganda machines. But so they get all these people to buy into this idea. I mean, they've got people bought in so hard to this idea that Trump is evil and he's going to destroy the world that you got people out there going to great lengths to stand against this presidency. You got people, I've seen people have committed, people have their own families over Trump getting elected president. You've got people, well, you've seen the ladies shaving their heads and all that, haven't you? Yeah. Yep. So you got that going on. Just all kinds of absolute hysteria nonsense. And it's all driven by this propaganda. And now the propagandists have flip-flopped back to the other side because that's what's good for business. I mean, how confused their viewers must be. You know what I mean? I think we just need to cut these people off altogether, these mainstream media people. Just defund them altogether. I think the country would be better off.
Yeah.
Let the people do the reporting. Well,
I think that's going to happen, whether or not this legacy media continues or not.
Mm-hmm.
The influence that the podcast source and the open advocacy of free speech on X has opened a lot of people's minds. And they are going to be looking for their sources from the same sources that they received from this past election. There has been a shift, and I pray that it goes in the right way.
Yeah.
As long as people like yourself will continue to be a voice so that others can hear, then what we have in the founding documents of our nation, in the First Amendment and in the Second Amendment and on continuing, what we have can and will be preserved by the people that those amendments and those documents are there for.
Mm-hmm.
But if we allow a takeover of others to feed us what we need, and that gets compromised by the, what did we call them earlier? The deep state.
The deep state.
Yeah. If there's a compromise there by those who feed the information, then it's only going to lead to doom. It's only going to lead to downfall.
So, do you believe that we're living in the end times?
We have been living in the end times since the church began.
That's a good point. But do you believe we're living in the
end times?
The end of the end times.
The end of the end times. I am one who interprets the scriptures, finding the rapture of the church to be a true event. And I find that rapture to be pre-tribulational. Technically, these last days, the end times as people like to think of, do not begin until that event takes place. Now, I could be wrong in that. And if I am wrong, and we could we be living in possibly the first 3.5 years of this 7-year period that the Bible speaks of. Possibly. But I don't think that's so.
So concerning the rapture, I believe in the rapture, but I don't believe that it's going to happen the way that we want it to happen. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Like, I like the idea that God would build everything up, and then come back and take us poofly in the swift flips, in the blink of an eye, right before everything just gets really shitty, That'd be great. I think that would be wonderful. But then if you look at Scripture, he doesn't ever really let his people get out in that sort of a manner. Mm-hmm. I mean, everything from Adam and Eve and the punishment they had to go through. I mean, literally the reordering of creation from the way they knew it to the way that it is now. All the way through all of the disciples who walked with Christ and performed miracles and saw great wonders and signs, but still met horrific ends, most of them being crucified or beheaded. To Jesus himself being crucified. And then, on and on. I mean, you look at all the end times prophecies and it's just turmoil. I mean, it's just really dark stuff, right? So why would he save or spare all of us from all of that just with some quick blink of an eye poof gathering in the clouds where we don't have to be a part of any of that suffering? Mm-hmm. I mean, it almost seems to me like, yes, he is going to gather his people. He is. And I do believe that rapture event will happen. I just don't believe it's, personally, I have a hard time believing. I hope that it is that way. Mm-hmm. But I have a hard time believing that it's going to be that poof and you're gone. I mean, because really and truly, what is the blink of an eye in the sight of a God who stands outside of time? Like, how fast is that? I mean, to God who one day in heaven is 1,000 years on earth. Mm-hmm. The blink of an eye might take a minute. You know what I'm saying? Yep. That's all I'm saying. The twinkling of an eye might not be as quickly as what we perceive it to be. Mm-hmm. And in that case, even Victoria mentioned the other day, some people think that the rapture is already underway. It's happening.
Like it's a progressive type thing.
It's progressively happening. And that many of God's people are being gathered right now. Or in the coming very near future. Mm-hmm. Which I don't know about that. Maybe. I've thought about that in the past. Like maybe that's why we see good people leaving. But there's also not good people that are leaving, so I don't know how that would play into that whole event. But yeah, I think there's more to the rapture than I just don't think it's as easy as that, as we like to make it sound. But not that God couldn't make it that easy. Of course, I mean, yeah, he could.
Yeah. Well, the scripture says that God has not appointed his people to the day of wrath. Mm-hmm. And there are indications, namely from a passage you mentioned a moment ago, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, and 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, where we can look at and we see indications that this will be a sudden and you mentioned in the blinking is in a moment, mm-hmm. in the twinkling of an eye. So this moment that takes place, there is no time in a moment. It's comes and then it's gone. So I do believe in a physical taking. where we will, as the scripture says, be taken to meet the Lord in the air, will be changed, made new. If you go to Matthew chapter 24 and look at it alone, you will not come away with a pre-tribulational rapture. It'd be very hard-pressed to do so. If anything, you'll find a post-tribulation or maybe even a mid-tribulation. But you will not find a pre-trib. When it comes to, I have a stance that I take, and that stance is exactly what I've been teaching a second ago. But one thing I do know is that God has not determined his people that we should be under his wrath. And we will be spared from that. Now, how that looks, I don't know. But what I do know is that we can take solace in that. We may face the world's wrath, and that's fine. But we are not appointed to God's wrath, and that's all that we should care about.
That's a good point. So, with that being said, if you believe, well, so we are living in the end times, but not necessarily the end of the end times, by your definition. So that means there's still time. How much time, we don't know, but there's still time. So if there's still time, what do you believe is the best approach for approaching like people in the world today? People that don't necessarily, specifically that don't know Christ, but also that maybe they are, maybe they've been really affected by all this propaganda and this political stuff and this media stuff and aren't open to Christian values and morals and principles. You have to understand, with this whole electing of Trump and this whole battle against abortion and this battle against transgender stuff and this even the battle against the border has been very, very negatively thrown at Christians. How could Christians do X, Y, Z, right? How could you support something that doesn't stand for immigration? How could you support? Because if you're a Christian, then you should be for this, right? How do we approach and speak to these people at this point? People that really do need to hear the gospel message, for instance. But people that are almost at this point been led to be completely closed off to the Bible and Christian teaching because it goes against all of their moral worldviews. So we have these people in this situation, and they are the mission field. They are the ones that we must proclaim this message to. Now, rooting that back to we are barreling towards the end of days, and I believe we're doing that fast. But Peter says, 2 Peter chapter 3, God is not slack concerning his promise, as some men count slackness, but is long-suffering to usward, not willing that any of us should perish, but that all of us should come to repentance. So there are, God has his people in the world. And he is not willing that any of his people should perish, but that they all should come to repentance. And they will all come to repentance. Jesus said, all that the Father gives to me will come to me. And the one who comes to me, I will in no wise cast out. So we have those great promises. That is set in stone. What we must do is be faithful to preach the gospel message to people, because we don't know who those people are. We don't know who. We don't know. We mentioned the elect earlier. We don't know who the people are. So we must be faithful. If God calls on a person for salvation, it's an effectual call that they will receive and believe and be saved. Right.
And there are barriers, but it's also a decision that we personally make. God has given us our own volition, our own will, and our own wills and the wills of many fallen people have been swayed so severely. But the penetrating call and the work of the Spirit in a person's life can overcome anything over anybody. And we just have to be faithful to the call of proclaiming that message. Now, as they come back and they oppose what we believe, then we just need to be firm. And if they reject everything we stand for and they reject the gospel we proclaim, then all we can do is pray for those people. We are not failures. We have accomplished the mission that God has given to us. Stand on the principles of God's truth and proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ to those people. When we do that, we have not failed, we have succeeded. The rest is in God's hands, and it's ultimately their responsibility, whether they accept or they reject. It's not on us. Their blood is not on our heads.
It's not up to us to save.
Exactly.
It's up to us to deliver a message. We were just talking about this the other day. Yeah. Yeah, that's been a hard one for me along the way because I feel like I have to get that. You have to understand. I have to make you understand this point. But when it comes to this, we're just messengers. And that's all we can do is
we
deliver.
should take great solace in the fact that we do not have to convince people into the kingdom of God because we couldn't, especially to the extent that you were just speaking of. There's no way that I would be able to convince anybody. The people are too far gone. And it's only by the grace of God that I'm saved, that you're saved. It's only by the grace of God that maybe that we hold the principles that we hold to now. Were it not for the grace of God, I could have been swayed and influenced by media and college professors and be a bleeding heart liberal right now and feel absolutely justified in everything that I believe. But also rejecting the gospel of Jesus Christ. The grace of God is what grabbed me, saved me, changed me. And that's what we have to trust in.
Absolutely. I agree with you, buddy. All right, one last question. What do you think about technology? Is it evil technology?
No.
Would you put a chip in your head?
No.
You don't want a, what is it called? You don't want a Neuralink chip?
No.
You know, Elon's making these Neuralinks. And you would just be able to, like, think through all your tasks.
Yeah. Money, in and of itself, is not evil.
It's a tool.
It's a tool. And technology, in and of itself, is not evil, but it can be used for evil, and very well may be. Did you see these robots that Elon
That was
put
my
out?
next question. Are you going to buy a robot?
Absolutely not. Am I going to let one of those things
I
in
am
my
buying
house?
a robot, bro. I already told Victoria we're buying a robot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, dude, I'm going to buy
They're
one.
going to be affordable.
They are. That's what I'm telling you.
It's insane.
They're going to be really affordable.
That's what's going to be taking over the world one day, apparently.
I know, so I need to hold your enemy close. So that way I get to know this robot and understand how glitchy it is and how I can exploit those glitches, you know what I mean? We're going to have a robot. She's shaking her head no, but we are. We're going to do it. I wouldn't do a chip in my head, though. No. I draw a line there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, according to Project Bluebeam, you don't need a chip.
That's what I've heard. Yeah. Yeah. So what about this mark of the beast? Do you think it's happening? Do you think it's already happened? Do you think that the jab is the mark of the beast?
No, not at all.
Do you think that the MAGA hats are the mark of the beast? I've heard
Possibly.
so many. I've heard so many different ones. Like Christians lining up to vote for Trump. Don't they know MAGA is the mark of the beast and they're wearing it on their foreheads? I'm like, oh my gosh.
No,
Wow.
I don't believe that, but I do love to hear people say things like that.
I know.
It's very entertaining to me. But no, I don't believe that at all. That's these end-to-end times that we were speaking of a moment ago. that is what the Antichrist will use.
Yeah,
and what
absolutely.
form it looks like, I don't know.
Do you believe in ghosts?
No.
You don't believe that ghosts are real?
No.
You lived in a haunted house.
In terms of, I lived in a place where something went down.
I lived in a place where something went down.
I know you did.
You lived in a place that was like straight up freaky and weird.
So, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so, and whenever I do not believe that when we die, our spirits remain
On the earth, you're saying.
right to wander and
Sure.
and spooky things. I do, of course, believe that there are demonic influences that do crazy things, and we see it, and we are heavily influenced by it. But no, not in the traditional ghost sense. No.
Okay. So me and Duder started out playing music together a long time ago. Pastor Walt. Sorry. He's always been Duder to me. That's Dooter for all of you who are keeping track. We started out playing rock music together. We played in a band. Duder played bass. I was singer. We had some very talented guitarists with us at the time and an awesome drummer. And we did some really awesome things together there for a while. I tell people nowadays, like, I started out playing music for the devil, but then somewhere along the way, God got a hold of me, and so I play music for him. Do you think this music that we play today, you think it's God honoring? I mean, and by that I just mean like the Christian music that's on the stations. Mm-hmm. I feel like, and maybe God honoring is not the right word. I feel like, yeah, maybe it is God honoring, but so my thing is, a lot of the Christian music of today tells this whole idea that, you know, life was hard. I was having a struggle, and then I gave my life to Jesus. Now everything's wonderful. Mm-hmm. And that's not my experience with the Christian walk or with my faith or anything like that. And and though I have encountered a few that do seem to have that kind of an experience, I don't think that's the vast majority of the experiences that I generally run across when I meet people. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that there's a great influx of that type of music in Christianity today, and that's for two reasons. It gives people the feels, and so therefore, number two, it sells. Unfortunately, there is a lot of truth that is to be found in some of this music, and some of it's just downright entertaining. It's decent music. I am not thrilled with the theology of a lot of the people that produce this music and create it. But at the same time, I do think that that can only carry on for so long, and that brand, that type of Christian music, is just not going to carry on for too long. And it's really, it came in and replaced worship as in terms of our singing and giving praise to God. It is wholesale replaced that in many ways, to where they are singing to God very man-centered things, where it's all about me and how my chains have been broken, and all of the cliches that you hear over and over and over again. It's basically the same song.
Yeah.
And that song can only play for so long. I do hope and pray that there is very rich theological music that is produced, that is truthful to how people feel. And I'm not necessarily talking about music made for worship to God, but just Christians creating music out of sincere truth. And sometimes it's hurtful. Or it shows where their struggles really are in life. And it shows some of the darker corners because we do struggle. But it also points to the God who overcomes and the God who can cause us to overcome all of these obstacles that we face. In terms of music that is worship to God, I desire that music be just that. Coming from people who have a good, robust theology, and that incorporates itself into the song because what we sing matters.
Yeah.
What we put out to God it should be worthy of Him accepting, and also what we put out to God is also a great tool in which we learn ourselves. The church that I'm at, we in terms of congregational singing, we still use hymn books and we sing old hymns. And one of the reasons for that is because of the theological richness of a lot of the hymns. We learn from that, and by singing it repetitively, we reinforce that. And that to see a revival of that in contemporary worship and praise music would be a wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. I like the old hymns, and I think that they were very much more God-focused in their approach. But, yeah, you just don't see a lot of that in music. I think some of the songs really do hit the nail on the head and do a great job, but as a whole, you're right. They're focused on the believer, on the experience of the Christian rather than God. But so, with that being said, to anybody out there struggling, anybody that's wrestling with faith or wrestling with the current state of the world and the nation and what's going on and how should I handle this? How should I turn to this? Like, how should I don't know, questions, you know what I mean? Like, what would be your advice to those people if you could speak to each of them individually right now? Like, just struggling with just all the crap that's going on. I mean, it's just left a lot of people depressed and wrestling with faith and wrestling with what is truth anymore? Where do you even find truth anymore? You know, a lot of people are really struggling right now, I think. Not to mention, I think there's a whole mental health crisis here in this nation. But aside from that,
simply put, trust God. Trust Him.
Yeah.
We can only go so far in how we handle the situations we got, and it can be extremely rough, and especially in situations where people are dealing with mental health issues. A lot of times it gets to a point where it's out of their control. And marital situations, wayward children, disease. The struggle to understand what it is that they should be trusting in. The ultimate answer to that is trust God. If you do not have a saving relationship with Him, then you must repent. You must turn from whatever it is you're trusting in because you can see that it is failing you. You must understand your place before a holy God, and that is that you have no standing before Him because you have broken His commandments. You are marked by sin. You were born in your sin, and there's nothing that you can do about it. You are absolutely helpless, but God in his love for you, provided a sacrifice for you. And that sacrifice came in the form of his own son. Simply put, God became a man. And he took. What you must believe is this. You must believe that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, went to the cross, and when he did, he took your sin upon himself. You must believe that. And you must believe that with every fiber of your being. And you must trust in that. Because when you do, the Bible says that that is true. If you believe that he died for your sins, then he did. And he makes you a new person. He gives you a new life, and he washes away all of that and makes you pure in his sight. But he also gives you a spirit who, as we discussed earlier in this podcast, leads you and comforts you, even in the darkest of times. But even Christians have a real struggle. And so what we must do is trust God with the outcome. Always. When it don't go the way we want it, we must trust God anyway. Because God providentially and sovereignly works all things out, as Paul promised, to the good of those who love him and those who are called according to his purpose. He does, and he will. And how he works that out may be brutal for you. It may mean that you die a horrendous death. Trust God, because he has the best worked out for you. And so, I'm not saying that that alleviates hurt. I'm not saying that that will make all things better. A lot of cases it won't. Your situation may get worse. But we must trust God that he knows what's best and what is right for you.
We oftentimes get wrapped up in what's best for us right now, in this place, in this moment. You know, I had somebody ask me, well, what are you going to be doing in 20 years? What are you going to be doing in 50? What are you going to be doing in 150 years? That's a different question. What are you going to be doing in 150 years? I mean, because if you can't see past this life, then you're going to be doing much of nothing, huh? Laying in a box.
Yeah.
But if you can, and you have that faith, and you realize that God has your life in his hands, and this is all temporary, then I don't know, but I'll be doing something in 150 years. Something. So I like to remember, I like to remind myself of that. But, well, dude, we've been talking for almost 2.5 hours now, just about random nonsense. I've picked your brain on just about every conspiracy theory that I can think of that's fun to talk about, at least.
I couldn't shed a lot of light for you on that stuff.
I know. I told you I was going to drill you on these conspiracy theories. You give us a load of insight, biblical insight, spiritual truths, things that I think are very important for people to wrap their brain around. I try to always include a little element of the gospel, and a little prayer here and there throughout our podcast. But you did a fantastic job here of delivering the gospel, which I think people really need to hear as often as possible, and know that it's true. I mean, know that there's a way out, that there's an answer, the answer to all answers, So we really appreciate you sharing that with us. I think we're going to wrap it up here, and then we'll get together and do this again another time. I've been wanting to have you on here for a long time. We have been best friends since we were little kids, and I tell people, sometimes I think God, puts specific people in your life. Some of them are meant to be there for short periods of time. You meet these people, they come into your life, they influence your life in any number of ways. You learn whatever valuable lessons you were meant to learn, and then God simply removes them, sends them in a different direction, sends you in a different direction, and he means it to be that way. Because for them to stay any longer would only cause damage and would only deteriorate and would not be good for your life in the long haul. Whereas other people, he leaves in your life for a very, very long time. And I've always been very thankful that you're one of those and that you and me have been best friends for so long, essentially like brothers since we were kids. And I have always thought that. So to have you on here is absolutely incredible. It's an honor, and I appreciate you doing it, spending the time here. We've put all the kids asleep in the next room, so y'all may have heard a little bit of the commotion earlier. We tried to keep them quiet, but we're limited on our space here, so making do with what we've got. But I appreciate any of you who have hung out for the last 2.5 hours to hear us ramble on about all kinds of topics. This is my very good, very, very good friend, Mr. and Pastor Walt Tompkins, a.k.a. Duder. Duder, thank you for joining us, man. Of course. Guys, next time, I don't know what we'll be talking about, but please join us and make sure you like and subscribe because we need those views. But until next time, we will be putting together a new video here pretty soon. We've got a gator hunt video coming up right around the corner, which I need to get out very soon. And then, well, since we've been here, we've been doing a lot of hunting as well, unsuccessfully so far, might I add, which is not my favorite thing. But we're hoping to get it done before we leave. We've got, another 5 days. So we'll be here another 5 days. But yeah, until we get a new episode out, we will see you guys. We'll see you guys when we get the next episode out right here on Southern Traditions for the Southern Drawl Podcast, guys. Until then, be free, be blessed. Peace. That's it, buddy.